Beware the woods that bend and twist, for they hide roots in roiling mist. Jagged branches beckon fools with tempting fruitful crimson jewels. Apples wrapped in snow-cursed gold, yearning for your soul to hold. With eyes within and eyes abound, your movements watched, your path turned round. Before you see where your feet lead, you shall fall prey to fiendish deed. While mentors act as students' shield, it is their fate that is now sealed. Fang of wolf and wing of bat, the curse is set, and that is that. From this day forth the star shall toil, seeking out the sinful spoil. But with another she is entwined, the keeper follows close behind. Beware the woods that lead through hell, lest ye cross paths with Diabell.
Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the wonderful people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. That's right, it's time for another lore update! Last we left our Seeker of the Sinful Spoils, she was fighting off the Goblin bikers who sought to capture little ol' Poplar. And then we, skipped a set because there really wasn't much to talk about. But then Infinite Forbidden came out, and now we have a lot more to chew on. So first, we're going to cover the Diabell, Goblin Rider, and Sinful Spoil cards that we passed on last time, followed by an overview of the new White Woods archetype that makes up Diabellstar's past. Then we'll explore what all of that means in terms of our story. First up, we get to cover Diabellstar's rival, Diabell's the Original Sin Keeper, a level 7 light illusion monster with 2500 attack and 2000 defense. And if a Sinful Spoils card is in either player's graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon Diabell's once per turn this way. While face up on the field, your opponent must set spell and trap cards before they activate them, and if a spell or trap card becomes set on the field while this card is in the monster zone, except during the damage step, you can target a card you control and a card your opponent controls and to destroy him. Ah, what a perfect counter to Diabellstar's signature effect. She sets a card on summon, and the Sin Keeper blows it away. It's also what makes Diabell's Floodgate style effect that potent. You always get a chance to blast an opponent's card, and that's not all the things it interacts with. Not only does it just hard counter pendulums, it also shuts off the utility of cards like Infinite Impermanence and Evenly Matched. And being a free summon in Sinful Spoil decks is just icing on the cake. Even the name is appropriate because it has committed the ultimate sin, being an illusion monster that can destroy monsters in battle. For shame. Snake Eye Diabellstar is a level 8 fire spellcaster monster with 2800 attack and 2600 defense, and when an attack is declared involving this card and an opponent's monster, you can place this card from the field and that opponent's monster face up in their owner's spell and trap zones as continuous spells. While this card is a continuous spell, you can target a fire monster in your grave, except a copy of this card, to place it face up in its owner's spell and trap zone as a continuous spell, and if you do, special summon this card. So if this fights anything it can't deal with, it just Crystal Beasts both of the involved monsters, and then it can hop back out by putting one of your fire monsters from your graveyard into your back row. It's a pretty snazzy monster to bully your opponent with, and having another target for Seeker is pretty chill. Honestly, if I thought feeding my pets would result in just a big power boost, I think I would have done a better job taking care of my Tamagotchis. Okay, now it's time to check in with our Goblin Bikers, starting with Troika Grier, a rank 3 Light Warrior Xyz monster with 1700 attack and 0 defense, requiring 2 or more level 3 monsters as material. While 3 or more Xyz material are attached to monsters on the entire field, Goblin monsters you control can attack directly. Once per turn, if any number of monsters are normal or special summoned while this card is in the monster zone, except during the damage step, you can target one of those monsters and attach a material from a monster on either field, and if you do, change that targeted monster's battle position. And once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can detach a material from a monster on either field, and if you do, negate that attack. Troika is great because it gives us a win condition, letting all of our goblins attack directly so you get all that sweet damage in, while giving you ways to stop your opponent from retaliating against you. The battle position change will more likely than not be used to turn monsters from attack to defense, and the negate attack, well, negates attacks. The only issue with this is that it keeps spending material, and you need to have 3 or more to get that direct attack. Thankfully, it's 3 material across all monsters on the board, so if you can get another Xyz monster, they can help you shoulder the burden. It's a really slow and steady situation, right up until you hit the turbo. Trust me, this turtle can move. You think a monster with 0 defense is going to be weighed down by a shell? Heck, it's probably just made out of paper mache. Goblin Biker Grand Pile Up is a normal trap card that targets an Xyz monster you control and special summons a Goblin Xyz monster from your extra deck by using that target as material, and if you do, attach this card to it as material. This is counted as a legit Xyz summon and does transfer the materials to the summoned monster. You can also banish this card from your grave, then target a Goblin Xyz monster you control and a card in either grave, and attach the targeted card from the grave to that monster as material. So this lets you make whatever Xyz monster you want, though generally it's going to be a rank 3 considering that's what our monster lineup is. Then we can turn any of them into a Goblin Xyz at any point. The best target being Goblin's Crazy Beast, since you otherwise have to jump through a few hoops to make that happen. And the Xyz material attaching effect is also pretty huge, as it kinda works as a way to attack the opponent's grave since it grabs a card from either grave at quick speed. But I don't think too many people are going to be rooting for the mascot turned Crazy Beast after causing a giant pileup like this. People are trying to get home from their commute, for crying out loud. This will make the Goblin Bikers look like common delinquents in comparison. Next, let's cover our Sinful Spoils. Sinful Spoils Struggle is a quick play spell card that targets any number of cards on the field and destroys them, the maximum number of targets on each side of the field being the number of that player's Sinful Spoil cards that are either banished or is in their grave. And if the set card is destroyed or banished by an opponent's activated effect, you can shuffle up to 2 cards from the field into the deck. I'm not really sure what the applications of this card is. We don't really have a theme that cares about its own cards being destroyed, at least in terms of the Sinful Spoils lineup, and we can only destroy our opponent's monsters if they're running any Sinful Spoils, which we can't really count on. Even with the Diabellstar package being shoved into almost everything nowadays, it's just not feasible. It is cool to see that Poplar has a bottomless appetite that can only be sated by feasting on giant beasts, but unless the format gets really centralized or we get that theme that likes to destroy its own cards, it's gonna be a struggle fitting this into any lists. Whispers of Sinful Spoils is a quick play spell card that targets an illusion or spellcaster monster you control to return that face-up monster to the hand or extra deck, then special summon an illusion or spellcaster monster from your grave or banishment. And if this card is sent to the grave to activate a monster effect, you can set it. This is skipping ahead a bit to what was released in our latest core set, but we are talking about Sinful Spoils here, so just keep some of this design in mind for later because we will be seeing it again. It's a pretty snazzy card to pay the cost for Diabellstar with, because then it'll reset, and Diabell is a spellcaster, so you can flip the Whispers on the following turn to put that back into your hand to summon a spellcaster or illusion from your grave or banishment. Then you can use her effect again later because she's now in your hand. Even grabbing this with Diabellstar is pretty cool too, in kind of the same way that original Sinful Spoils is for any deck with a level 1 fire monster, though the quick play status of this spell does make it slower than it just being a normal spell like original Sinful Spoil. However, any spellcaster or illusion deck now has a reliable revival effect to get their best monsters back into rotation. A bit ominous that all of the branches in the White Woods are now not white, but I'm sure everything will be just fine. Sinful Spoils of Slumber Morion is a normal trap card that targets a face-up special summoned monster on the field and changes it to face-down defense position. And if you control a level 5 or higher illusion monster while this card is in your grave, you can set this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use one effect of this card per turn, and only once per turn. Hey, a searchable Book of Moon, that seems pretty clean. It doesn't work on normal summons, sadly, but since a majority of good monsters will be special summoned, it's not much of an issue, links notwithstanding. And if you're on the Diabell's package, or any other big illusion cores like the Chimeras, you get to use this again later. Now, because it's not super clear from the art, I do want to point out that, despite the apple being very prominent in this shot, Morion is actually the feather sleeve of Diabell's coat, as shown in the Diabell's concept art, acting much like Diabellstar's Sinful Spoil companions, though Morion doesn't have the same kind of sentience that the others do. Kinda wish they'd used the card named after it to show off that Sinful Spoil in a bit more depths, but I guess the designers were asleep at the wheel for this one. Sinful Spoils Subdual is a normal trap card that takes a level 5 or higher illusion monster from your deck and either adds it to your hand or special summons it, but if you special summon the monster with this effect, you can't activate its effects during the main phase of this turn. You can also banish this card from your grave, then target a face-down card you control and return it to the hand, then you can set a spell or trap card from your hand. You can only use one effect of this card per turn, and only once per turn. Now, this is much more specific for illusions, which for now is only Diabell's within our story, but does currently have a wide variety of targets, including Nightmare Apprentice, which itself is pretty easy to summon from the hand, allowing you to maintain its effect, which will in turn search you another illusion monster. It's also important to note that if you do special summon the monster, it just can't activate its effects, but the continuous ones will still apply. So Diabell's will still force the opponent to set their back row before activating them, and our orthodox illusions will still apply their monsters can't be destroyed by battle effects. Heck, you can even activate any effects that work outside the main phase, because that's the only time where they're restricted from activation. So if you want to summon Golgoyle the Steel Seismic Smasher for a big body and a free summon, just feel free. Because of this, I expect Diabellstar is gonna see play in a number of illusion decks moving forward, especially with Whispers acting as a good secondary target. But I don't even think it needed the extra help, but women stepping on things is already a recipe for success. You didn't need the actual guard utility. So now that we're caught up with our last wave of support, what's going on here? Well, the chain of events is actually pretty straightforward. There are just some details I wish I knew more about. After Poplar is taken by the Goblin bikers, Diabellstar begins to chase them down to get the little scrungler back, but at some point, the Goblin's crazy beast goes on a stampede! This wakes up Poplar, who proceeds to eat the beast, as seen in Sinful Spoils Struggle. I do love that Poplar's face unfolds like that, it's very fun, but my first question is, if that power comes out of nowhere, or if this is gonna make some kind of sense later on. The Snake Eye monster we fought so far didn't do anything like this, though it could be argued that Flamberge is itself an evolved form of Poplar as well. It even shares some characteristics with its Diabellstar form, both being fire, but having a different type from Pyro, its original, with Flamberge being an actual dragon, and Snake Eye's Diabellstar being a spellcaster. Although Crazy Beast is a fiend, so if that was the case it should be a fiend? And maybe it is. This is a combination of the two people, so maybe the typing is coming from Diabellstar, not Crazy Poplar. There could also be a hint in the effect of Sinful Spoil Struggle, but unless the Goblin bikers have another Sinful Spoil card that we aren't privy to yet, it doesn't make sense that that would be used to destroy Goblin's Crazy Beast, so I'm still at a loss. But regardless of the method, Poplar becomes Snake Eye Diabellstar. Or, like I said, the creature in Snake Eye Diabellstar. I'm sure the name references the team. And we can actually see a lot of Crazy Beast characteristics in this new form, including the big tusks, the horns, the arms, and the bracelets that it was wearing, the whole 9 yards. This basically puts the bikers in their place, but no sooner do they disperse than Diabell's shows up, using the power of her Sinful Spoils of Slumber Morion to subdue Crazy Poplar, reverting it to its baby form. Diabellstar goes to engage Diabell's in combat to get their little buddy back, which is where that section of the story leaves off. Though, because Diabellstar is now right next to Morion, I'd hazard a guess and say that its soporific qualities also knock out Diabellstar, causing her mind to drift to older, simpler times, which brings us to the next part of our story. White Woods is a series of light spellcaster monsters mostly, that have a big focus on synchro summoning, using spells and traps to fuel their effects. This sounds pretty costly, effectively every card is some variation of a Summoner Monk, but their own on-theme cards actually prefer it that way, being sent to the field if sent to the grave to activate a monster's effect. First, we have Asteria of the White Woods, a level 2 monster with 0 attack and defense, and you can send a spell or trap card from your hand or field to the grave to special summon a light spellcaster tuner monster from your deck. And if any number of spell or trap cards are sent to the grave to activate a monster effect while this card is in your grave, you can special summon it. This is a great way to summon out the tuners we'll be covering soon, giving us access to our boss adjacent monsters. And if any of our on-theme cards chew up a spell or trap card, or even anything not on theme, you get this back for free. And because this gets us light spellcaster tuners, you know what that means. That's right, it's branded time! Ooh, I can't wait to use this to summon Quem and Cartesia. It's gonna be a blast. Reset of the White Woods is a level 2 monster with 0 attack and defense, and you can send a spell or trap card from your hand or field to the grave to special summon this card from your hand. Then, add a White Woods monster from your deck to your hand, except a copy of this card. And if any number of light spellcaster monsters are special summoned from your field during your opponent's turn while this card is in your grave, you can add this card to your hand. This works slightly differently from Asteria, still getting you that additional card when summoned, but Reset doesn't use up your normal summon by itself, and can get any White Woods monster, with Asteria being one of the prime targets, though you can grab your tuners if you are so inclined. And then, if they get summoned during your opponent's turn, you get this card back into your hand from the grave for free, which basically resets it. Rasia of the White Woods is a level 4 tuner monster with 800 attack and 1500 defense, and if you control a White Woods monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can send a spell or trap card from your hand or field to the grave to draw a card, and if this card is in your grave, as a quick effect, you can target a White Woods synchro monster you control or that's in your grave to return it to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon this card, but negate its effects. Thankfully, it doesn't have that usual thing where monsters that reborn themselves get banished if they leave the field. The only downside is really that you can't trade in that spell or trap card for a draw. This is a really good grab off of Reset's effect, because then you still don't have to spend your normal summon. The quick summon effect is also going to be useful in triggering Reset's recycling effect while giving you another body for a variety of plays. Synchro, Link, Xyz summoning, you name it. Give this card some time and you'll Resia what it can do. Silva of the White Woods is a level 4 tuner monster with 1500 attack and 200 defense, and if normal or special summoned, you can add a White Wood spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. And like Rasia, if this card is in your grave, you can special summon this as a quick effect by targeting a White Wood synchro monster you control or that's in your grave and return it to the extra deck, but this card's effects are negated. It's much sadder on this one since we have an effect that searches us a card, but thankfully you can grab it off of either your level 2 monsters, and you can synchro climb from there. It's very appropriate that this wolf spellcaster knows how to play a little fetch. Ursiella, Wicked of the White Woods, is a level 6 synchro tuner monster with 2000 attack and 1600 defense, requiring generic materials. If this card is special summoned, you can send a spell or trap card from your hand or field to the graveyard to add a White Woods card or a light spellcaster monster from your deck to your hand. And while on the field, Illusion and Spellcaster synchro monsters you control gain 500 attack, and also they can't be destroyed by your opponent's effects. So, if you choose to make this synchro, as both Asteria and Reset are very good at assembling the pieces for it, all you need is another spell or trap card to feed it to replace it with any of your on-theme cards, or a light spellcaster. And you already know how I feel about light spellcasters. The big advancement here is the static buff, cause this monster actually has 2500 attack, and your opponent's destruction effect removal might as well not exist. Why, it's enough to drive your opponent batty! Silvera, Witch Wolf of the White Woods, is a level 6 synchro tuner monster with 1900 attack and 2400 defense, requiring generic materials. If this card is special summoned, you can change all face-up monsters your opponent controls to face-down defense position, and while on the field, all Illusion and Spellcaster synchro monsters you control gain 500 attack and deal double piercing battle damage. Oh, slow down here, deck. Okay, I think we may have just found our win condition. Flip down your opponent's whole field, shutting off their effects, and then punish them with our Synchro Monster attacks. What I super love about this is that it triggers on any kind of special summon, so if you have, say, Whispers of Sinful Spoil on standby, you can summon out Silvera to book the opponent's entire board at will. Time it right, and now you have a field of monsters that can cleave through your opponent's defensive lineup while dealing massive damage, especially if you can get multiple Silvera and Urciela attack boosts going. See, now I was joking about how the earlier iteration knew how to play fetch, but now we're teaching our opponent's board to roll over. Diabell, Fiendess of the White Woods, is a level 8 illusion synchro monster with 2500 attack and 2000 defense, requiring generic material. If this card is synchro summoned using a tuner synchro monster as material, you can target a spell or trap card in your graveyard and add it to your hand. And when your opponent activates a card or effect, as a quick effect, you can send a spell or trap card from your hand or field to the grave to special summon a level 7 or lower tuner synchro monster from your extra deck, grave, or banishment. Wow, that is a gaggle of effects. Presumably, the intended way to make this is with Reset's effect, grabbing Asteria, normal summoning her, using her effect to summon out Resea or Silva, whichever floats your boat at the time, then sync our tuner with one of our little ones to make the synchro tuner of our choice, then use it and our last little one to make Diabell. By doing this, you get to recycle one of your spells and traps, getting you back something nasty, and either using it for its own effect or saving it up to use for other effects to pull synchro tuners out of thin air. Not only can they summon any of the white woods we've used so far, it can grab any level 7 or below synchro tuner. And while it doesn't count as a synchro summon, which means we can't make good use of cards like shooting Riser Dragon, you still have access to quick sync monsters like Quistron Quandax and TG Mighty Striker, Golden Cloudbeast Malong for some incidental removal, or Denglung if you have any Yang Zings lying around. However, Silvera being a way to flip down the opponent's whole field might just be enough of an option by itself. Also, now I can see why these illusion monsters are defeating stuff in battle. They were never illusions in the first place. They were fiends the whole time! Problem solved, everyone. We can go home now. Beware the White Woods is a normal spell card that you can activate if you control a level 6 or higher illusion or spellcaster monster to target a card your opponent controls and to destroy it. And if this card is sent to the grave to activate a monster effect, you can set this card. That last effect is one you're gonna see on all the Whitewood spells and traps, along with Whispers of Sinful Spoils, the card we talked about previously, making them very useful for fueling the Whitewood's effects. Urciela is in a good position to tutor this up whenever you sync for them if you need some spot removal, but until then you can just ditch it to activate either Reset or Asteria, and let it sit around on the field until you get a big enough monster to activate. Doing this does highly telegraph that line of play though, and does make it vulnerable to Diabell's effect. But that just means that if your opponent wastes the removal on the known card, they'll have to beware the unknown. Legend of the White Woods is a normal spell card that you can activate if you control an illusion or spellcaster monster, letting you add a White Woods monster from your deck to your hand. What I like most about this is that you can send this to the grave to activate your monster effects, reset it, then flip it over immediately to get that search, basically letting you use our White Woods monster effects for free. It's very grand. It also means if you're splashing in any illusion or spellcaster monsters and you don't find the White Woods half of your deck, this can help get you there. It's otherwise not a very complicated card, with all the shadows being cast on the play's walls. It's basically Plato's allegory of the Rhoda. Woes of the White Woods is a normal trap card that special summons a White Woods monster from your hand or deck, then immediately after this effect resolves, you can synchro summon a White Woods monster. Good grief, this is a good card. Any on-theme monster, you can just get it right out of your hand or deck, and then you get a quick sync. It's only for our monsters, sure, but I cannot stress the fact that Silvera is an on-demand, turn off your opponent's field button, as long as you don't have any links to deal with. And this is bound to get better and better the more cards we get in the theme, be they synchros or not. The name may be right, but not really the meaning of it, because when this is resolving, I'll be letting out a big whoa! Lots of woes, if I can help it. Alright, a few tech picks before we get into the story of things. I still stand by the fact that Silvera is our win condition. If we punish our opponent with that double piercing battle damage, they'll be out like a light, so we'll need a good group of spellcaster and illusion monsters, especially of the synchro variety, as well as spells and traps that are not only good, but can help feed our effects to make the most of them. So what can we play to help them out? Well, first up, I think Summoner Monk is an irresistible option here. It's also a spellcaster and can summon either Risea or Silva and lets you go straight into Diabell. Alternatively, you've got rank 4 plays if you so desire. Now, as far as spellcaster and illusion synchros go, the only illusion one right now is Diabell. As for the spellcaster ones that exist in the TCG at time of recording, our options are sparse. Our main focus is making level 6 and 8 monsters, which means common options like Arcanite Magician are out. Explosive Magician might have been good if it could generate its own spell counters, and Tempest Magician is, banned. Despian Lulu Will Lilith can be made with either Risea or Silva and any level 8 monster, but the problem is getting that level 8 monster. Though if you manage to get there, you have a great effect on a body that can get really huge. Maybe the Cartesia Splash can make Gronguinol to bridge the gap? And in that scenario, you may not even have to synchro summon for it. But probably our best pick is Zorua, the Magistus Conflagrant Calamity, which offers you a wealth of options when it comes to the equip effect. You can slap Ivos on there for an extra 1000 attack and defense to take advantage of the double piercing damage, or equip Nina Ruru for a monster double attack for potentially even more damage. If you're looking for a bit more utility though, Xyz Leona isn't bad as it negates the effects of a monster on board, so you don't have to deal with as much interruption. But we're not restricted to only spellcaster and illusion synchros since we don't put a lock on any of our monsters. They're just not going to get that double piercing damage. So what kind of options do we have? Well, Muddy Mud Dragon is a powerful gateway into a number of fusion monsters, and if we go into the Albaz pool, this is going to be indispensable in that regard. Stardust Charge Warrior is a great way to get you a free draw, though since Coral Dragon is itself a synchro tuner, it'll probably be more helpful during our synchro climbs. With all of our tuners and light monsters, Visas Omri Tara is great for nabbing any of the Visas field spells and going to town with any of those themes. But Infernity Doom Archfiend is probably my favorite. Even if your hand isn't empty, it'll still negate a face-up card's effect on the field until the end phase, and then if we land another Ursea or Silva, you can sync that and ideate together for Chaos Angel, thus giving you even more removal, as well as unlocking all of its effects since we used a dark and light monster, keeping our synchros safe and our monsters from being destroyed by battle. Not to mention that we're getting that double attack from IDA, which is pretty good on a 3500 attack body. Our monsters are going to need a resource engine of cards we can pull from to activate their effects. It doesn't matter how good they are, we're eventually going to run out of spells and traps to actually feed to them. Thankfully, a recent addition to the game has joined the crew as probably the best option we could have asked for: the toy cards. You'll want to get Toy Box into rotation as soon as possible, which can set 2 toy monsters to your back row as spells, as long as they have an effect that lets you set them already. They have those effects because they have a little bonus whenever they're sent to the grave after being set that way, but they don't have a really good way to trigger that effect, which is just fine for our Whitewoods monsters because once we set them as spells, well, they're spells. Toy Box effectively gives us 3 spells to spend on our effects off a single card, to say nothing of the bonus effects we get for sending those cards to the grave. Soldier will special summon itself when you do so and gets you a level 4 light monster from our deck as long as Toy Box is still around, which, well, I mean, if you've seen the episode up to this point, you know we have some great targets. And Toy Tank can either act as a body when it summons itself when you do send it to grave from there, but you can also tribute it to special summon any level 6 or lower monster from your hand or grave, which includes our tuner synchros. Then, when you're all finished with those, you can send Toy Box to the grave for another effect. Easy peasy. And, well, I mean, we have spellcasters, so there is Hidden Village. It feels like I'm recommending that card a lot in these past few episodes. Why am I in a spellcaster bent? As for a silly tech pick, Creature Swap is probably the funniest. This card works best when you're looking to give your opponent a terrible monster, since you'll only ever get your opponent's worst monster, and yes, technically that checks out if our opponent has 1 monster, don't at me. Our goal is to give our opponent a defense position illusion monster. That way, we can keep slapping it with our double piercing battle damage and it won't be destroyed, as long as it's one of the traditional illusion monsters. And one of our best options is a TCG exclusive that hasn't gotten a great reputation as of late, but I'm about to enlighten you. Void Burial, the Dragon Undertaker. We'll be wanting to go second as much as possible to take advantage of that double battle damage, so anytime our opponent sends a monster they control to the grave, we have an opportunity to jump this card out of our hand in defense position. Then, we use Creature Swap to give it to our opponent, and would you look at that, it's got 0 defense! With only its own boost, Silvera is punching in for 4,800 damage, so any other spellcaster or illusion synchro monster that has 1,100 or more attack, which is, all of them, can attack in to close things out. Just, make sure the last thing you do is give your opponent Void Burial, otherwise they'll get to weaken your monsters, which isn't very bueno. Alright, that does it for the tech picks. Now what in the world is going on with this prequel? As usual, while the monsters show us who the actors are, it's the spells and traps that are going to be integral to our understanding of the plot. And all of them are rendered in these stylized shadow puppet style images that look like they were taken right out of an old book of fairy tales. Normally, we'd be seeing the play from the opposite side of this screen, just observing the shadows being projected on there, but from our perspective, we get to see how the dolls interact with the shadows they cast, which I think is a nifty touch. It also frames these events not just as having happened in the past, but the ancient past, long enough for there to be actual legends about what happened. This implies that, even though it may seem like only a few decades take place between tiny baby Asteria and adult Diabellstar, something may have happened to prolong their life, or was even put into some kind of suspended animation. Though I don't think that has much of a bearing on the story at all, just a little bit of background flavor. The legend shows our 4 primary characters, each distinguishable from their silhouettes and colors. Asteria and Ursia are on one side, Reset and Silva are on the other, with Diabell taking center stage. But they all seem to be existing together without there being an actual problem. No one is lashing out, and even though the mentors are standing between Diabell and the children, there's no threatening movements happening that would imply that they're being shielded or that there's any kind of conflict. So while I had assumed going into this that Diabell was some kind of nasty threat deep in the woods that the mentors tried to keep the children away from, Diabell may actually be a matronly figure looking after all of them. And if Diabell is a title, it would make sense why it was passed down to our 2 main characters. But it's not like they're perceived as entirely benevolent either. Beware the White Woods shows a generic puppet standing at the edge of the forest looking at the creeping shadows within. So outsiders are encouraged not to enter, but the current residents are fine as far as we can tell. Until Woes of the White Woods happens, which shows our mentors having been transformed into their Sinful Spoil forms, with that same large, looming shadow from Beware. A shadow that I assume is Diabell, since we don't see any other entities in the woods, though I think I have an answer for that too. See, if Diabell isn't the big bad here, then the dark presence has to be tied to the apples that we see throughout the forest. The motif of the forbidden fruit is a pretty Abrahamic legend which doesn't line up with anything we've seen so far, but we actually haven't had a consistent mythology to pull from so far in the story. The Snake Eyes reference the Lithuanian myth of the grass snake, the Goblin Biker's kanji references the night parade of 100 demons, so that's Japanese mythology, and Sinful Spoils Morion references Morrigan, an Irish goddess of death and war. So the idea might be that this whole story is specifically meant to be a combination of a lot of different mythologies. So, when the mysterious entity that resides within the apples whispers to the young students, they fall for the dark being's trick and partake of the forbidden fruit, unleashing the creature trapped within. What exactly happens past this point is unclear. Woes shows a bat and wolf, which is clearly a reference to Ursia and Silva, but we're not entirely sure that they're in their full Sinful Spoils form at this point, since even their synchros have those bat and wolf features. But because the art doesn't show them being combined with Asteria yet, I think it's safe to say that they're not Sinful Spoils. Yet. They fly into battle against the dark entity, which I'm sure causes their next transformation. Another thing we can infer is that Diabell transfers some of their essence into Asteria and Reset. We don't see this happen, but in the story so far, colors have been a very important factor in identifying characters, and as it turns out, Diabell is the only one with two colors, green and purple, each of which we see with Diabellstar and Diabells. Diabellstar's is pretty easy to notice. Her right eye turns green when wielding the power of the Sinful Spoils, and Diabell's left eye glows purple in much the same way under the same circumstances. It's hard to see considering the color of her eyes, but this is also confirmed in the reference art. And would you look and see which of Diabell's eyes are which color? So, where does that leave us? Here's what I think. The dreaded White Woods is a place of danger that nearby villagers avoid at all cost, as it's ruled by a great and powerful fiend and her loyal coven of witches. In truth, the woods contain an ancient evil that Diabell is determined to contain, specifically an evil that seeks to corrupt the hearts and minds of mortals, so she spreads the tale of her own fiendish nature to keep the weak-hearted far away from the woods. But Diabell can't do it alone, or needs to ensure that there will be people to keep the woods safe in her absence. So Diabell employs the help of two witches, who themselves have their own apprentices. They're taught the ways of the woods and of the Sinful Spoils, creatures transformed into powerful artifacts of great power, a technique derived from the very evil sealed within these woods. But one day, the evil presence convinced the youngest students to partake in one of the forest's ripe red apples and thus unleashed the terrors within. Ursia and Silva would attempt to subdue the shadowy presence but stand no chance, and are turned into the Sinful Spoils we know them as today. Diabell, seeing that there isn't a way to contain things at this point, begins to transfer her powers to the remaining students, but before they can escape, Reset is captured by the evil presence. Because of this, both Ursiella and Silvera are entrusted to Asteria, and is tasked with finding the one artifact that can stand a chance against this creature, Snake Eye, the original Sinful Spoil, and will spend many years trying to find its resting place, in a temple far away from the evil presence's influence. But what of Reset? Under the thrall of the dark creature, she is also tasked with hunting down the original Sinful Spoil, being granted the title of Original Sin Keeper, and is granted Morion to assist in the hunt. This potentially explains why Reset wasn't herself turned into a Sinful Spoil, as they probably don't do a good job of wielding other Sinful Spoils, though there's likely some other underlying aspect that determines whether or not something can be a Sinful Spoil. Many years pass and Diabellstar continues to seek. Diabell's posts a bounty to help hunt her down, composed just well enough to recognize her, while abstract enough and unflattering enough to get on her rival's nerves. But eventually, Diabellstar does find the temple, overrun with large dark branches, much like the ones in the now blighted White Woods. It seems the dark presence has found its way here after all, but regardless, the Seeker of Sinful Spoils fights through the tree-inspired minions, culminating in the dragonic beast that emerged from the original Sinful Spoil itself. After its defeat, the small creature Poplar is extracted. But nothing seems to have changed. Ursiella and Silvera still maintain their Sinful Spoil forms. Annoyed that her mission doesn't have a clear next step, Diabellstar wanders into the city where she crosses paths with the Goblin Bikers. Noticing she is very deep in thought and very distracted, the Goblin Bikers abscond with Poplar, leading to the events that cause our little rascal to absorb Crazy Beast, knocking aside the Bikers and alerting Diabells, bringing the two rivals into conflict once again. And that is where our story pauses for now. Rage of the Abyss will reveal more details once it drops, but for now, we're left to ask, is Diabell a benevolent protector or the dark presence that controls the Sinful Spoils? Is Diabell's under the thrall of another entity, or is she out looking for power for her own sake? And what in the world does she want with Poplar? For now, all we can do is speculate, so in the meantime, what are your thoughts on the theme so far? Any theories or details that have gone overlooked that you've sniffed out? Let me know what you've discovered down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the lovely people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. Today's episode was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, the Critic of Innocence and Upstairs Media, Nebula Navigators, 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Owexa Toehime, Anansi Dragon, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Emony Chan, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Megacombi, Millennia Asta, Muzuki Clark, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Scott 48, Serenity Towns, Skybuster Leo, That One Dumbass, Thievery Coast and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Alpha Sly, Almento 5010, A Random Pup, Ariel Kersey, Beelzephyr, Baron Von Titty Sprinkles, Beluga Master, Bernag, Blitzwolf, Blue Gem, Borger with a Shotgun, Chaz Ghost, Childish Lamar, Dr. Reaper R.I.P., Drachenwald, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Fabrizio Orpianesi, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Ignis Heath the True Draco Slayer, Inblink, Jester Designs, Kale the Dragon, Kevon Public, Lemon Yugioh, Lobomaru02, Manga Pages, Marluxia's a Girl, Matt Simmons, Mick Spoofy, Michael Shimabukuro, Nitromo, Obsidian, Ramen Resurrect-chan, Shizuki Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, Terror Top to 3, Tiger X 2476, The Pokemon 52, The Legendary Raven, and Zaldreka, as well as all the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you checked out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to catch up on the story so far, check out this video covering the Snake Eyes cards. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.